To make your campaign of assessing each risk element from your risk register effective, you and your team will need to establish some common terminologies. Let's take a look at several. First being the risk universe. If we chart your performance over time, there's some level of current or target performance we expect to see over this year. There's a line that is as high as you could possibly go. The performance if every good thing happened the way you'd like it to. And there's another line which is a performance you get if every last bad thing could happen. Those lines, the extreme upper and lower lines, are what's called the risk universe. The risk universe effectively is the risks which could impact either positively or negatively the ability of the organization to achieve its long-term objectives. There's two other lines in here. There's a line that we're going to call the risk tolerance. What the risk tolerance is it's the boundaries of risk-taking outside of which the organization is not prepared to venture in pursuit of its long-term objectives. So in theory, if you go over that line, the organization is in serious trouble. Then there's one other set of lines. Well, it's called the risk appetite. The risk appetite is the amount of risk that the organization is willing to seek in order to accept the pursuit of its long-term objectives. So as you write up your business plans and operating forecasts, you're expecting a certain amount of forecasted risk or variance in performance. That's the risk appetite. So let's talk about this as sort of some numerical examples. Let's say by year end, your risk current performance or target is, let's say we're planning on having 5,000 customers. Your risk appetite is based on the forecasts and plans. You feel that it might be as low as 4,700 or as high as 5,600. Now, if you go below 4,700, you're obviously going to have some cost and overhead issues. And if you go over 5,600, you might have customer support or brand issues to deal with. And then, again, as a numerical example, risk tolerance. Maybe if your customers fall below 3,500 or exceed 7,000, serious consequences will happen, and perhaps it will result in you needing to leave the market. So those are sort of numerical examples of what these may look like. Now, if you're going to back these up with metrics, obviously performance around 5,000 customers would be green. Performance between 4,700 and 5,600 are probably going to be sort of yellow metrics. And then, these are red, where management needs to pay serious concern. Now, we'll come back to the metric issue later on when we come to build the risk scorecard. But there's a relationship between target, risk appetite, risk tolerance, and the performance level that you'll see on your scorecard. But our current task is to rate the risk impact for each of your risk elements. So let's use the same framework and begin taking a look at risk impact. Now we're going to use the same 1 to 5 scale that we saw earlier in the seminars, where 1 is a minor impact and 5 is catastrophic. This is a common series of definitions you see in front of you, but we'll provide you with a PowerPoint so you can change them to insert your organization's terminology and so forth. So let's go back to the screen we're just looking at, where we've got the risk appetite, risk tolerance, and risk universe defined. If we bring in those definitions we just looked at, if it's a minor, a score of 1, which is a noticeable disruption, but it's dealt with under routine procedures, that's kind of the risk appetite. So we get rid of the target. And the first score of a 1 is probably within the risk appetite range of your organization. Risks moderate and major tend to describe what we'd expect within a risk tolerance umbrella. And so a score of 2 or 3 would imply performance that's in the risk tolerance and it's beginning to become a significant issue for the organization. And then obviously a 4 and 5, severe and catastrophic, those are elements outside of your risk tolerance but within the world of the possible or the risk universe. So there's a relationship between these terminologies and the scores that you'll be using when you set up your risk impact. And as I said before, eventually a relationship you'll see back to the performance metrics. Now, there's a few other definitions which you may want to become familiar with, but we won't be using at all during this first module around risk scorecarding. So, again, this is provided in the attached PowerPoint, and you can modify these definitions around what your organization sees, but they're things like the risk capability, risk capacity, risk management maturity. Those sorts of things you'll find in the risk textbooks and the readings that are attached, but are not germane to this current module that you're working on.